Hello, this is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker. Good morning, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Wayne. Absolutely fine.
Good stuff. Sad news to start us off with. No, not Dave not being here. That's lightens the mood a little bit, actually, but because we know where he would go with all this. It was sad news to hear about Ricky Hatton yesterday. Manchester legend, boxing legend, one of the 21st century sporting icons. Really, I was trying to. So when I was writing this beforehand, and I was, like the sort of like notes how to best describe a boxer like him. I mean, I'm not a massive boxing fan, casual boxing fan, but he was one of those, you get some boxers, and maybe it's something to do with Manchester as a city as well. They really got behind him. I remember in the early 90s, and maybe it was because Nigel Benn was Paul Ince's cousin. There's like a real sort of football. Sometimes football does attach itself onto boxing. It did in this occasion. Like they're not hindered by the fact that Hatton's was a Manchester City fan, massive fan. Did you ever meet Ricky Hatton? Did you ever come across him in any of your?
No, never come across him, to be honest. But I look when you mentioned there about boxing. Boxing is a working class sport, and there's a reason why it attaches itself to football.
Yeah.
Simply, people who are fighting against the odds to improve their lifestyle, improve their family's lifestyle, and that's the way he was. Without meeting him, you saw what he was about, and he's a bit different now. Someone like him is completely different to the boxing to the boxers of today. Really, they seem a different breed than we do actually in certain ways. Because I'm not a boxing fan. I mean, I was a Sugar Ray Leonard fan. I loved watching that kind of boxing, but he caught my attention just by the fact that everything around him.
Yeah.
And no. Since then, I couldn't name you a boxer that I would say I would watch, to be perfectly honest. But you'd watched him because you just knew he was so hungry. He was desperate to improve his and his family's lifestyle by doing
Yeah.
well in the ring.
Yeah. Playground scrapper, wasn't he? Like when you
Yeah.
watch the fights, that's what he looked like, and it's like I think that's
Mm.
what. And he talked like one of us. It's like, all right, he's just a lad, really. And I think had this slight infectious way of like you wanted to get behind him, even when he got into the fights where you thought, all right, these fighters are a little bit too classy for him, like Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather. You thought it might be a step too far, but it was like still like you were being represented, like there was a part of you who was there because he was from the same streets and everything like that. I say from the same streets. I'm talking colloquially there. Like it was a national hero, really. Everyone got behind him, and just look, there's still being speculated about the cause of death. All I will say is like he had well documented mental health struggles, and it was so like poignant. Last week was World Suicide Prevention Day. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you're struggling with your mental health, just reach out and talk. I know there's been a bit of a backlash about this. Like talking's not always the easy option. For me, I've always like when I've ever struggled with anything, talking's always the first step to a better solution to moving forward. It might not be the case for everyone. I'm just saying this is what works for me. There are numerous online resources you can use now. I'll put a few in the descriptions for this after I'm done. Okay. Right, let's talk about Manchester City 3, Manchester United 0. Let's just get onto the comments before we kick off with this. Johnny says, morning, gents, hope you well. Morning, Johnny. I saw you took the defeat badly. I don't think we took it any better. Baba says, I don't know, Luke Shaw is surviving at this club. He should be in the MLS by now. We'll get to that. The Red Devil Radar says, hello, good morning, mate. Hope you're doing well. Okay. City 3-0 at home. United never in the races, really. This is a typical performance of the Amorim era. They had typical good moments. They look quite nice moving the ball sometimes, but never really looked like they had a cutting edge. They look way too vulnerable. They looked open. All of their vulnerabilities and weaknesses are on show. Some might say even exposed by the formation as well. And United conceded the goals in difficult to watch fashion. There was no challenge for the first one. I mean, look, if you're of a sort of neutral disposition, and you shouldn't be watching this podcast or listening to it if you are, but if you are, you might go, oh, well, City had some quality there. Obviously, I'm going to look at it from a critical aspect from United. I thought that you might say Doku was a good dribbler and he went through 4 or 5 players, but I looked at that and I thought no one's making a challenge on him in the first instance. You actually allowed him to get into the box, which was the first problem. 2, I think it was Ahmad and maybe Shaw stopped. Bruno didn't track Foden. Foden's got a free header at it. Doku gets a second chance at the cross because Ugarte's clearance is so poor. He's basically, I don't know what he's there, if anything, a mannequin. Like you see the training, the way they put him on the rail and they move them along. That's what he was like because he didn't do anything. He didn't provide an obstacle. He didn't do anything. Didn't make it difficult for him. Very easy opening goal. Second one, look, again, I think Doku had a little bit to do with that, but they play the ball through. De Ligt looks like he's tracking Haaland. I don't think he's going to get there anyway because Haaland's run is good, but Shaw seems to give him a shout and say, I've got him. But Shaw's nowhere near him.
I know you're going, just quickly, yeah. I looked at that and I thought when I first saw it, now, one or two things, he's got to say to De Ligt, and it had to be so quick, man, you have to say to him, man, over your shoulder. But yeah. He should. But if anything, if you're a defender, you sense danger, you sense Haaland, you go straight to him and you block him. Yeah. You get close to block him. He doesn't do anything. And if you watch that again, you have a look at De Ligt. You look at what he does after that goal goes in. He absolutely stares Shaw out. Yeah. He is absolutely fuming with Shaw. And we've got to remember, Luke Shaw is not someone who plays central. He's someone who's been bought into it. In theory, playing central is saving his kind of career at the moment because he can't play as a wing back. He hasn't got about him to do it. He hasn't got the legs to do that. And that just sums up United in general, not having the legs. Yeah. Sorry, I butted him.
No, because I was getting more and more irate, probably getting redder and redder in the face. So Shaw, obviously, I don't know if he gives him a shout, but he's definitely picking him up, and he's nowhere near him. Then there's the absolute nightmare that happens a couple of minutes later where Ugarte gives the ball away in a stupid area. They get 4-on-2. They should have scored. Haaland just messes about with it. Bayern not to blame for any of the goals, but you could argue that a better goalkeeper does better. He also had a couple of weak moments in there. All in all, I don't know if we're going to put that result down to Bayern. I wouldn't at all. But better selections, get better results. Anyway, all of that to build up to the third goal, which was the playground of Premier League football. We've seen some bad goals conceded, and it's not the worst goal United have conceded, but it just sort of sums where United are. Amorim has made the change, brings on Maguire like he always does. He's put Maguire in the middle. City are playing this game where they're trying to find space behind the defence in the middle, and United play so high up in the play for the third goal that Shaw is slack in possession, loses it. City are ready to pounce. Maguire is 10 yards in the City half, and Haaland's still got space behind him inside his own half to then have the entire United half to run through a goal and doesn't miss. Paul, I'll let you have an interruption for the second goal, but come on. I sent you the screen grab of the third goal because it's doing my head in so much. Yeah. Talk me through your thoughts of the third goal.
Well, I got it wrong in a way because I chatted to someone earlier today and I said, well, Haaland was 3 yards in his own half. And to be honest, that's wrong. He's more than 3 yards. It's absolutely shocking. Now, Luke Shaw was a bit slack, but I'm blaming Harry Maguire as well in this one. He's ball to Luke Shaw because, sorry, I'm just going to have to get my phone and have a look at your picture again. And I'm looking at the positions of when Harry Maguire, I can remember Harry Maguire's given the ball, when he's virtually given it to Luke Shaw, Luke Shaw's body position says, I can only go one way.
Yeah.
It's not set for him to, if it was for him to be positive and go forward, I would turn around and say, fine. But he wasn't. He was set facing the other way. And and there was 2 midfield players coming down on him. And what Harry Maguire should have done, given that we're losing a game of football, pull it in behind City. The teams that have beaten City this season have put it behind them.
Yeah.
But when Manchester United play, they don't look to going behind. To be perfectly honest, everything's in front because we've got no one who wants to run behind. But that ball should have just much high as possible to turn City round, especially as he is the last man because he's in the middle. But he doesn't. He plays that ball in there. And the moment Luke Shaw gets caught, and we can talk about Luke, could have been maybe stronger or done something. Harry Maguire, when he's gone and done what he's done, he is like 5 yards in front of Haaland. And I'm sorry, we're talking. I mean, I'm watching Harry Maguire running back. He was like a young kid in a playground who thinks by moving his head he's going to run quicker. It was absolutely awful the way he was going back. It was something from like Benny Hill kind of sketches, the way he was running back. It was awful. It looked so amateurish. And it happens because of the manager keeps making his defensive substitution like for likes. De Ligt is perfect in the middle. Perfect, because he's an organiser. You can see, and he loves to defend and organise. Euro could play in there because maybe he's got a bit of pace. Maybe not the authority yet of what a De Ligt's got, because De Ligt's got a good grounding behind him. But he makes that change, but he has to make that change. If Maguire can only play in the middle, you put him out wide and he would have been exposed more as regular as what he was for that third goal.
Yeah.
But it was just absolutely poor again. I'm not getting his substitutions. It doesn't make any sense at all. There's a young lad there, centre half, Heaven, who's proven already to a lot of United fans, but he's got something about him.
Yeah.
Play him, play the boy, bring him on. But I'm still not understanding it. Those kind of substitutions. And I'm going to jump ahead here, by the way, because we talk about a substitution. We have to remember he made a double substitution. He brings on Mainu, who actually comes off of that pitch as maybe United's best midfield player.
Yeah. In
that little cameo he done, everything he done, and I have to ask the question: why did he start with Ugarte?
Mm.
And he's saying that and where everyone's been talking, Mainu don't fit the system. No, I'm wondering, is there something personal there? Because he looked absolutely fine to me. He virtually could have come off and been United's most complete player in everything he done. And the only one who could maybe get close to him is Mbueno, who was United's biggest threat in that game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We'll get onto all of that. But you mentioned the Benny Hill thing. I did want to jump in and interrupt there because I was going to say something like the Benny Hill sketch. It wasn't funny then. It wasn't funny yesterday. Yeah, but we've got to laugh. We've got a lot of comments coming in. I'll just try and get through a few here. Johnny says, feel like a stuck record regardless of the awful formation system. The lack of fight, aggression, tempo is aggravating. Vicky says, should never have ducked. Bayandir should never have ducked his head for the second goal. Can I ask at what point you would have taken Shaw off and replaced him? We've got a couple here. Adam saying, Heaven for Shaw was the sub we needed. Heaven has to be above Shaw. Yeah, I completely agree. But I think the issue was and is, like the issue with Bayandir, is that you would have needed to have played those players earlier in the season. Heaven would have needed a run of games before he came into this, or at least one game.
Right, we have to remember that when he arrived at the club, Heaven, it sounds so strange to keep saying that, really, Heaven, is that his first appearance, he come on a sub against his old club, Arsenal.
Yeah.
And he looked absolutely fantastic. There wasn't a problem with him. He was as smooth as anything. He wasn't flustered. He wasn't emotional playing against his old club. He went straight at it. Going into that game, I think at the moment in time, we're giving this league, this Premier League, this kind of massive status, best in, people have got to understand it. No, if you're young, if you're deemed good enough you go out there and you play. I never heard this before when Giggsy made his debut against Everton. No one talked about him then, about worrying about, making his because he made it in the latter part of 1991 season, didn't he?
Yeah.
His debut. No one talked about, he was just played. And that's what happened. But everything now is, we got to do this. Now, what a load of rubbish. He's already played a few games. He got injured in one when he was going well. He hasn't been able to get back near it since. Get him out there. Just go and do it. It doesn't make any sense.
I agree with what you're saying. I think from the theoretical point of view, I'm putting that across is more like if you put him in cold for the Derby game when you're making changes and he makes a mistake, then we'll get onto that, onto the point of the Cobby thing and the other changes. So he's now got this issue, Amorim, a big issue. When he came into the job, he was like, "This is the system. This is the way that I'm going to play," and he just stuck steadfast to it. He never once changed the entire way through, even when there were opportunities to do that. All right, given there weren't a lot of games where you go, like, we could have done that. We could have. The wins we've had against Burnley, Southampton, and Ipswich were so narrow. You don't say, all right, well, there's a good run of minutes in a single game to change the formation, but he could have done it in a game, change a formation. The problem that he's got now, he's so rigidly stuck to it that with the Manu thing, like for instance, yesterday's game, but also coming up for the Chelsea game, is that if he makes that decision to put Manu in or makes the decision to change his system, he now looks like he's going back on himself, right? He's put himself in a position of weakness that he didn't need to do by sticking so steadfastly to an opinion. So it just seems pointless. But the other thing is, like, what can Ugarte do that Manu can't do? He talks about specialists in position, but you can't say that when you bring in. We know why he brought Maguire on. It was 2-0, and he wanted a goal threat in the box to try and come back. He wasn't bringing him on for what he can do in defence. It was literally to see if he can rescue a result, which is embarrassing to get to that point this early on in his United career. That's the option that he's looking at to salvage. But that's not systematic, is it? So he can't talk about the system when the individual qualities of the players are so disparate. They don't make any sense in combinations. So you can't use that as an excuse to not play Manu. And it also makes him look bad. Well, you said Heaven could have played in yesterday's game and just glided through it. Well, Cobby just came on and played with no pressure at all. He was moving the ball, anything. All right, we're talking about a 30-minute cameo, and maybe he might not have been able to have the stamina to do that over 90 minutes, but that's not the point. Start him on 0, and if he runs out of steam, bring him off. But anything that he did was much better than what Ugarte did. And if he can't do the defensive things that Ugarte does, just ask him to do them. That's what management is. It's asking players to do things a little bit outside of the comfort zone, asking them to do a job. That's the classic line. And he just, by welding himself to the system, it creates a problem because every time United lose, he said it afterwards, I understand the narrative, but does he understand it? Because it creates a problem. It doesn't. There's nothing about that system that is contributing to United playing well or winning games.
But what he could do, he's stubborn. It reminds me a bit of like Arsene Wenger in his last few months or year or so at Arsenal, where he's suddenly become really stubborn. They don't want the media and maybe fans to be right or be them seen as being told by fans. But what he could do, and given that situation yesterday, he could have changed to a 4 at the back while that game's going on. He could have just done it in game.
Yeah.
And then people then it wouldn't be seen as if like he started that way and everyone's right. You just do it in game. You just looked at it and you thought to yourself, this game, they needed that bit more going forward. Come away from a 3, go to a 4. Go to a 4, get people out, get people wide. And Cobby, going back to Cobby, the difference he made at Manchester United had a midfield player who was actually running with the ball.
Yeah.
And as smooth as anything. When he runs, he's like a mini Rolls Royce. But then when Bruno tries to do it, he's like a chugging JCB. There's a difference of running with the ball and the belief. When he runs with it, Bruno, you think to yourself, he's not going to be able to do anything positive with it. But Cobby gets it, and while he's doing that, he's looking.
Yeah.
In football terminology, because we've gone posh now, and it's called scanning. Anyone who uses that word is an idiot. But I'm just going to say it now, so people now know it. It's one of these words that they brought into it, like what they call it. Like, no, it's not closing down anymore. It's high press and pressing and all that rubbish. But he's looking at what's around him for where his next pass is going to be. Well, no one else can do that. And it caused City problems. They struggled a little bit to deal with him because they had someone running. And what I said before when I was doing the game is that City are vulnerable at the back. You can see it, but never played that way. Never played enough to cause them a problem. There wasn't anyone who was running beyond. And boy, if Cunha had been fit, there would have been a problem. We would have been a much bigger threat.
Yeah.
Chesko would have been better.
He wasn't terrible. He wasn't terrible yet.
No, but he needed help. He needed runners to take one of the centre halves away. But there wasn't enough movement. Diallo cannot play in that role. Diallo has to be out wide in a 4 or free across mid, whatever. He has to start from wide to come in. You put him as behind the front as a whatever they're using his numbers as a number 10. He struggles from there because the plays he's having to turn around and look at the play. He would rather come up with the play and work him from that way rather than having to always be on a half turn all the time. And we could see that the moment he went to a wing back position, how comfortable was he then? You could get the ball to him in better areas and find him. He come back into the game again. Chesko struggled. Now everyone might understand the problems that Højlund had as well. When Højlund, in the end, after so long, his head went. He went out feeling negative, knowing that nothing was ever going to go his way by the way the team was playing. But if you're going to play that system, as I was at Crystal Palace Sunderland at the weekend, and I made a valid point of watching Crystal Palace in their system, the way they play a free, and they've got everything that United haven't got. Have they got better players? We could argue about that. But are their players as big as names as Manchester United? No. But what have they got? They've got high energy levels. They don't stay in that game, and maybe they should have won that game. But at this moment in time, if we was to go and play Sunderland, they would win.
Yeah.
They would win. Sunderland are everything about what today's football is. They're just a team of athletic, strong men. That's what they are, Sunderland, without a shadow of a doubt. If you could see them, they come out of that tunnel, and I was just looking at them, and there's like, these lads are just solid, and the leader of the pack is Xhaka. He leads them, he organises them, good signing. You know, absolute fantastic signing for Sunderland to organise these young kind of athletes and get them to try and slow down and just pass it after they've done their bit of graft. And honestly, there's problems. The same problems as last season are going to come back and haunt Manchester United. It's as simple as that. And not getting that central midfield player is now a bigger problem as what it was with the goalkeeper.
Yeah. Let's get through a load of comments coming through. Lee says, players don't sense danger. That's a problem all over the pitch. They react to problems rather than being proactive, particularly when they have numbers behind the ball. Yeah, that's fair. I will say, funnily enough, that I do think that strategy is a proactive strategy, and I think that United went to play their own game. It was just hopelessly exposed. Barry says, spot on the time. At times, it's like watching under 11s. Yep, no reaction from the manager in games as well. T2, that Izzo, I thought Amorim got the lineup wrong. He could have played Bruno in the 10, played 2 players out of position instead. Systems don't matter when the team continuously make basic errors. Adam missed Mount and Cunha's aggression massively, and Martinez too. Baba on Mount says, as bad as we think Mount is, he's so much better as a 10, playing with his back and receiving the ball. Ahmad looks like, yeah, but I still think that even that, when you say, oh, well, Mount is as bad as Mount is better than this. Yes, maybe, but we're still miles away. It's still miles and miles away. A couple more. Foshan Einstein said the insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I wish Amorim knew that quote. Johnny Agate can't pass, Bruno can't tackle. 2 things need to happen, says Baba. Either Amorim tells Bruno to start tracking his runner, or they can both pack their bags and leave. Adam Gillespie, morning, Andy. Hope you're doing well, mate. He says, morning, guys. It's not going to happen with Amorim in charge. Looking at yet another manager. Ironic, the new football department has presided over the worst one yet. It's a big call. But I want to talk about this, Paul, because obviously, we've suffered enough with Dave in the year role for a few months. He's staunchly on the Amorim out. I'll never do that. And I won't use this podcast as a vehicle to start saying manager out or anything like that. But it is about opinions. Everyone's entitled to them. There's plenty in the comments who think that it's time for a managerial change. The quotes that he's coming out with aren't the most inspiring. Like I said, he was talking about the system. He said something like, you change the system. If you change the system, you change the manager. So he's saying, sack me before I do that. But also, Bruno did the same, and it's a little bit embarrassing. Like Amorim has gone back in 2 different press conferences now. He's gone back to the Arsenal game, and he's talking about how well we played against Arsenal. We didn't play that well against Arsenal. We played well enough to get a point, but Arsenal were in front by the time that we started to play well. So Arsenal are a reactive team. They sit back. They allow you to have the ball. So it's all right saying we played well. We didn't create a lot of chances. We weren't brilliant in the day. And to use that as some kind of anchor to justify everything that he's doing since then is ridiculous, because we still lost the game. In the Ferguson era, he would talk about that Arsenal game as a red flag. He would be saying these are the problems that we've got in the system, where he's now, Amorim's using it as an indication of everything that's good to build hope on. And that's the issue for me, is that, all right, there are plenty of things that someone says outwardly and the things that they say behind closed doors, because he can't be happy with what we saw yesterday. He's already called out the defending, but you can't have any faith in that as a system because it's not working and it exposes all the weaknesses. I know he will want higher energy levels. He'll want better defensive qualities in his players, but there's so much of that is systematic. Do you have a concern now? You've always been like, the manager needs time, but you must have seen the other factors that are going around. There's that league table that's saying like since Amorim took charge, he's the bottom. United, of all the teams that have played who've been in the Premier League, apart from the relegated teams, United the bottom of that. They've accumulated least points since Amorim took charge, which isn't a surprise because we know the results don't lie. Are you looking at this and thinking this is a manager who needs more time? Do you think he needs? He's caught himself in a difficult position because, like I said, the compromise now of having to change the system in order to better accommodate the players is going to look like a step back. The accommodation of putting Kobe Mainoo in against Chelsea is going to look like a big step back when he's said he's fighting with Bruno for his place. Right? These are big public statements that he's made that is going to make his position look weaker. Do you have confidence in him as the right man, or are you starting to think maybe he's not?
Yeah, I am, to be honest. I've kind of not as strong with him as what I previously was, or I was with other managers. So I don't want to keep saying it because it makes United look like any ordinary club by the way they're going. That's the thing. The club should be better than that. But if the people who are running it aren't doing their job properly, then there's always going to be a problem, regardless of who the manager is. Because he needed help from day one. He didn't get it. Then everyone was hoping that he was going to get help this summer. Didn't get, again, what really I believe they needed. Goalkeeping situation should have been sorted out before when it was. But it's still, everyone's still wondering if it's the right decision to go down the path they went down. I'm turning around and saying, given everything the way the team is at this moment in time, I would say they needed assurances, and they needed to go maybe the bigger picture rather than go in the long game. We saw that by Man City's goalkeeper. We saw his presence. Yeah. I haven't seen the presence in a goalkeeper like that since Big Pete, to be perfectly honest. He's punching when he come out. It was the authority, and it made a difference because City had been struggling defensively. Yep. Trafford just looks like a modern day goalkeeper. He wouldn't scare kids. He wouldn't scare kids in a creche when he shouts keepers. You would stand there and you would stand up against him. When goalkeepers shout goalkeepers, you put on body armor and a crash helmet. Yeah, simple as that. But that's what he hasn't been given. He hasn't been given a midfield player. But then when I see him, the substitutions, I'm still again seeing the same players. And when I'm seeing other teams doing it with lesser value players or lesser players of lesser note and maybe quality, but I'm seeing them just being aggressive in what they do. I wonder what he's looking at and where he's trying to go. So I'm now worried now because I'm sitting there and all of a sudden the commentator next to me goes, because he's getting all the information early, he's going, I think Manchester United are going to make a substitution. I'm writing down what his substitutions are going to be. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, he gives me a thumbs up because I've nailed it. It's not by me being clever. It's not being clever. It's just obvious, isn't it? It's repetitive. You know what you see where the scoreline is. You know what's going to happen next, and even the fans know it. Harry Maguire runs out now, and he's mostly thinking in his head he's a hero because he's nicked a few goals, he's made a few goals, so he's in that place of thinking he's a hero now. You know, everyone's back digging himself up from adversity and all that. No, he wasn't picked in the team because he's not good enough, and yet he brings him onto the pitch again, and it can't keep happening. If he's going to start and play this way, I don't know if Martinez, if he's fit yet. You got Delict, you might have Heaven, you got Euro. Put on players who are defensive minded in the three. The first thing in their mind is, I'm going to defend. If they're going to play football, they're going to control pass move. It doesn't have to be this tippy, and with Luke Shaw, his so-called lovely left foot. Defend. Luke Shaw's been caught quite a few times on that kind of defending. He was involved in the Europa League final. Almost similar situation there. Didn't sense the danger. 6-7 yards from goal, you attach yourself. You don't know. You might not be able to see the ball because you're getting there late, but you make it difficult for that man. He doesn't do it. He does. And then when the goal's conceded, it's kind of, and you think to yourself, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You've got to live in that town. You're meant to be living in that town, and you're meant to be feeling the rough edge of what everyone's thinking of you when you walk around on Monday morning. And it's just, then he's not spiteful enough in what he's doing. He seems a really nice man. Everything about him, absolutely what you want on your front cover of Manchester United, a manager looking like that, who see the way he dresses. But at the end of the day, you want him to be making more positive decisions. And he's not doing it. And there's nothing wrong sometimes in just putting your hand up and saying, I've got it wrong. Yeah. And then you can find something to cover yourself. I gave these players the opportunity to do it. I believe they could. They virtually were telling me they wanted to do it, but they've let me down. And then bang, go and start again.
Yeah. I mean, the part of the issue is like in what you said there, the ability to turn over players, right? But just before I talk about that, the dress wear, he does look smart, but he should wear a club suit for a Manchester derby. If you're not going to wear them for every game, which you should do, I think you should if you're a United manager. Anyway, let's get on to just a few of these comments before I come back to what you were saying there. Ugarte and Menu, the most balanced midfield. Ugarte can't pass, and Menu can progress the ball. Menu hasn't got legs. Ugarte can cover for him. They hide each other's weaknesses. But this is, instead of complementing each other's strengths, that is United's entire issue for a generation. Vicky says, when Amorim kicks the telly in the changing room, I thought fine, but he consistently does these childish things. I know managers do things, but it is becoming cringeworthy. Julio Leche, if I've spelled that right, Leche. The board were naive to hire a manager who had a nice system with niche profiles that required being specialists in those positions whilst not being able to perform what is already there. Exactly. Very well put. The longer this goes on, the more vindicated Ashworth is when he said the manager was the wrong appointment due to not fitting the personnel at the club. You then sack. Yeah. If it was quite clear from the beginning that this manager needed 5 or 6 specialist profile players for the system on top of what was already there, absolutely. Tony, who does the tactics pod with us, says system's too easy to play against. He can still play his way, adapt to suit Bruno's attempt with 2 defensive midfielders behind him, but his pig-headedness is going to get him the sack. And Box says, are you genuinely worried about relegation if things don't change? I don't know if I'm there yet, but it might not take long. You talk about the turnover of goalkeepers, and I agree. Donnarumma, definite presence. But I think that's the difference between the clubs as well in a certain kind of way. You know, the City's relative performance from under last season, they were like, all right, we need to replace Edison. So they know everything about James Trafford. They brought him up. He's been brought up in this Guardiola system, so he should be perfect for it, but he's not good enough. So they immediately go out. They don't immediately, like a season later, they immediately within 3 games go out and get the Champions League winning goalkeeper, who's nothing like Guardiola's style of football, but it doesn't matter because he's a world-class goalkeeper and he immediately makes a difference. Now, that to me says a lot about Guardiola's approach to winning as opposed to like his legacy of football. I don't think that matters to him as much anymore. It's more like the cold hard trophies, especially after not winning anything last year. It's like, no, let's guarantee trophies this time round. and he's like Emperor's New Clothes anyway. Everyone will say that his football's beautiful even when it's tosh. So they've got Donnarumma in, world-class goalkeeper. United, they've only just replaced the goalkeeper with a rookie after 2 years of catastrophes, and they can't put the rookie in. So they're playing the backup goalkeeper. They've got Harry Maguire coming on after 6 years at the club to rescue a derby game against the perennial champions when they're 2-0 down. They got Luke Shaw starting a derby in 2025, when in 2020 he played so badly in a game against Spurs, we lost 6-1, that we signed Alex Telles to replace him. That's how long he's been at the club since that time. 5 years. He's been at the club for 5 years since it was time for him to go. And that's, Shaw's a good player and he hasn't reached his potential, but there was a time, a cut-off, where you say, all right, this isn't going to happen at United. The point is I'm making, all right, City's ability to turn over players it's warped people's mentality of how quickly things should turn around in football. So they shouldn't have been able to do that in 3 games, right?
City put winning before sentiment.
No, yeah, no, absolutely. But what I'm also saying is, like, so do Liverpool, so do other top clubs. Liverpool's ability to turn over is kind of like ours, but they don't have the debt saddled to us, so they can operate a little bit better than what we can, and a little bit smarter because they've had smarter people in charge. Now, we, on the other hand, we've wasted so much on so much wastage that we don't have the ability to turn it over. And the players, once they've been at United for 2 years, have stunk it out so much that their value has plummeted so much that you cannot give the player away. So they stay, instead of just letting them go or not renewing the contract, we renew the contract and they stick around for another 3 years. It's just been absolutely ludicrous, and that's contributed to this. Messi can't turn those players over. I'm not, it is what it is, and we all know those issues. I'm saying there are issues that he's inherited, Amorim, that he's not responsible for, that are there, but he's still got the responsibility of picking the team, and he's been there long enough for it to not be this bad. I don't think, when he said a storm was coming, all right, fair enough. I don't think from where Ollie was in the summer of 21, finished second, lost the Europa League final on penalties, I don't think this regression was necessary. I really don't. I think for this 4 years spell of absolute nonsense, I just don't think it was necessary. I don't think United were in a better position than that. We just needed some smarter moves at that moment in time. Anyway, rambled on about that enough. I just want to have a very, very quick, not to point out something. It was just something that came up yesterday when I was like, they said the graphic came up. Haaland scored 9 goals or 8 goals or 9 goals in Manchester derbies now, close to the highest score ever. And it made me think, how many of these records since Chelsea came in have been sort of like taken by the, let's call it, nouveau riche, the clubs who've had the artificial income. I mean, Chelsea and City. How many records have been claimed by them? Because I would think, like, the Arsenal unbeaten record, any record of the past when Liverpool won a game, Arsenal won a game only losing one, or Liverpool only lost one. There was Liverpool had a record defensive low at one point in terms of goals conceded. I was like, how many records have been set in the Premier League by just those two teams since 2004, to give you an idea of how unrealistic the landscape's been skewed. So here's a list of them. So most consecutive title wins, Manchester City's with 4. Biggest margin of winning a title, 6 of the top 10 most points in a season, the single most points in a season, 2 out of the 4 records for most home points in a season, most away points in a season, most wins in a season, most away wins in a season, most consecutive wins in a season, most consecutive wins to start a season, most consecutive wins to end a season, most consecutive away wins, most consecutive home games undefeated, most goals, fewest goals conceded. All of these records were set by the teams who've had this artificial money pumped into them. It's not even sport anymore. You watch it, and all right, it's not a reaction to yesterday's game. It's the sporting landscape in but the point is, those feats are meant to exist for genuine achievements, a genuine level playing field of, like, you go, all right, this player did this on a comparative playing field. It's like, I love the lottery winners, just like saying, oh, we're the biggest and best. Like, they've got the biggest house on the street, Well, yeah, of course you do. It doesn't mean, you know what I mean? We've got the record house on the street. We've got 10 bedrooms because we won the lottery. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't. It's not a sporting achievement. I just don't. Anyway, yeah. Blimey, them stats. That's why I'm here for, to depress you on a Monday morning. Very quick one then. What's next for the Chelsea game, Paul? I mean, Chelsea, it's a full week. Chelsea have been doing quite well. They've got so much transition at the club there. Does he bring Manu in? Does he bring him in for Ugarte? Because that's a big step if he does. Does he change the system at this point? Does he walk before next week?
Well, you know he ain't going to change the system. He's fortunate that he's playing Chelsea, really, because Chelsea, they've got João Pedro. He's their biggest threat, to be perfectly honest, on a regular basis. Chelsea do flatter to deceive, to be perfectly honest, in the way they are. We talk about it because of the amount of money they've spent and all these young up-and-coming players they've got. They remind me sometimes, and the boss used to use this word, and when he talked about individuals, but I talk about it as a team, Chelsea are a bit like a fizzy drink. You know, they just suddenly the bubbles go and they just go flat. And I've seen them when I was at the Chelsea Fulham game. I've watched them twice this season already. They're not competing to win the league. No. They're not competing. They're so reliant on Cole Palmer. So reliant, and the reason why, because he's not like the rest. He's a maverick. He's not like the rest. He's the only one who does things differently. The rest of them play to what the manager wants. Cole Palmer does what he wants. He's the manager's nemesis, but he knows he has to go with him because he's the one that the players rely on. The fans, you know, dote on him as well. So there's a chance that they might get something from that game being at home because it's the biggest kind of fixture. So they're going to come out. As I said earlier, if they were to go and play Sunderland at Old Trafford, that would be a massive problem because of the way Sunderland play. You mentioned earlier about Arsenal and about elements talking about Arsenal and their performance. I knew before the game they played well against Arsenal. Arsenal are not a progressive team with the ball. Arsenal don't have runners in behind. So they weren't going to threaten them. There was always going to be decent against Arsenal. My biggest worry was the next game they had after Arsenal, and I don't mean the Grimsby game. So in every game, and I just sit there when I'm going to games, and sometimes I'm a pessimist, but I've always got a good idea what's going to happen next. Has that team got legs in midfield? Yes, there's a problem. Where is Bruno Fernandes playing? He's playing in that midfield. There's another problem. But then you play him in, but you play him. Everyone keeps saying him, play him in behind. The problem is then you're killing. Then what happens to Cunha? What do you do with him? What do you do with Mbuena? Two players there. Šeško has to play.
Yeah.
Has to play. So Bruno is a problem. And I was one of those people thought he was 31 the other day. This is a time, if you're going to go forward and build, go without him. Let someone else put the cape on and try and get the team through it rather than him always doing it. Because if he doesn't put the cape on, you get a performance like you saw yesterday. But he could come out and he could win the game against Chelsea. The media will sell him. Fans will jump on a bandwagon and he's there at the top of the tree again. Been fantastic. But now the club needs to move on and find someone else and bring on someone else who is going to lead the team in a better way than what he is. Scoring, getting United out of trouble is helping United. It's not leading the team. And I saw the way he spoke to Dorgu, and what he'd done to Dorgu during that game, and it was disgraceful. Dorgu's made a mistake on a weight of a pass, and because he miscontrolled it, rather than actually maybe attempt to get it or even just watch the ball, the first thing he done was turn round and glared and mouthed off to him. So he is, in my humble opinion, he is a problem for everything because everything has to fit around him, and he's becoming a liability without the ball.
Yeah, coming from Vicky, Amorim said Kobe's fighting for Bruno's position. Well, I think that Kobe won the fight. I still don't see him. So, well, he played better than Bruno yesterday, that's for sure. We do have a lot of comments in about it. We've run out of time this morning, but thanks for everyone for commenting. Keen comment there just said, good morning, Wayne, Paul, and the chat. Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining the conversation this morning. Keen representing the pod on Talk Sports. Settle the score. program, which should be fun. So I had mad fun on TalkSport at the weekend. Yeah, less said about that, the better. Not least because I predicted a City win, and unfortunately was right. I don't enjoy being right. I'm not going to predict anything for next weekend because I want us to see a win. Yeah, no, that's it. Well, we'll talk about the manager and more stuff like that next week. Hopefully, Dave will be back with us to have a conversation. If not, I don't really care. Enjoy my time with Paul much more than with that sod. Anyway, I'm joking, Dave. When you listen and watch this back, like you really. Okay. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the show, if you can give us a review on the platform you listen on, would really appreciate it. If you could like and subscribe to the channel as well and subscribe to the audio podcast, would really, really appreciate it. I'll be back next week with Paul and Dave to look at the Chelsea game. Hopefully, that will be a turning point. We've had a few, haven't we? All right. Have a great day, guys.